Welcome to the Miniatures Paintbrush. Today we're going to paint up some craters. Alrighty, so welcome back. Here I made some craters and I modeled it off to something I seen. So the first thing I'm going to do is create the texture. You have some craters here. Picked them up from GW. I got them secondhand. And I use ultra flat black from Rust-Oleum Camouflage. It blends to the plastic, so I really like this. Especially when it's warm outside and I can actually base coat outside, prime outside. Then I use realistic water from Woodland Scenics. Now I can use a lot of different things in order to do this, but I wanted to use it up. Yeah, I can use this epoxy right here that got really cheap, and it works just as well. But since I have the realistic water, and I kind of just want to use it, so that's exactly what I'm going to do. Now, it takes a lot longer for realistic water to dry, and I mean a lot, especially in my basement, which is cold, and it just takes so forever. And it's exactly what you want to do, is you want it to take a long time, especially if you're going to pour, like I pour, the dumb butt, and pour the whole entire thing. Because this stuff likes to, I don't know, change its consistency and leak all over the place whenever it can. Even if it's not leaking all over the place while you pour it, it'll find a way to leak all over the place at some point in time. I don't know why. Something about realistic water. I don't know. But yeah, that leaks. I don't know how, but that will. Anyway, it took me several weeks for it to dry. But while it was drying, I said after, I would say a day or two, I took these beads that I got from a necklace that, not a fake, but a costume jewelry that my wife picked up, and she didn't really need it anymore. She got it secondhand. It's like, what do I do with this? It's like, oh, I'll keep it for bits. And I'm using perfect plastic putty. I really do like using that brand with a little bit of water because it has a tendency of drying out. And I'm putting it to fill up the hole where the jewelry bit would do in order to get a perfect round globe. And for the round globe, what we're going to do is we are going to fill in those holes and put them inside the crater. We're going to simulate bubbles here, like bubbling up. But this isn't the only thing I use to simulate bubbles. I also take this Cilia gel pack, the one they say you do not eat, that you get in packages. Now, I don't eat these things, but I do use them as bubbles. Then I put some primer on top of the primed object once it's dry, after like 2 weeks of drying, and that's what you left. You got all these bubbles. Now we need to know what color we're going to paint this project after I hit that Rust-Oleum. That's right. What color am I going to paint this project? So I got some inspiration while I was reading my White Dwarf, and I saw this battle report, and I saw these craters right there, and I thought they were cool, hecka cool. So I did want to mimic that. So that's exactly what I went for, something like that. Let me see if I can get a better picture of it. There's one over here. Let me see if there's another page. Hold on. Nope. There it is. Okay. Nope. This one. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Sorry. Okay. Getting to it. There it is. All right. There it is. A really good picture. There it goes. And that's the one that you saw in the beginning of the video. And that's exactly the one that we're going to try to recreate right there. And I'll show you how I did it. All right. Let's get to painting. Okay. So we're going to start off with a fairly weird Ekimus by Badger the Minotaur. That is a weird name for a purple, but look at that purple, though. That is a cool purple. I never choose the color that I'm going to use based on the company or the brand or anything like that. I just look at the color, and if I like it, I go for it. So it doesn't matter which brand I'm using, and it really doesn't matter. I mean, I know how to use, you got to know how to use each brand, because each brand sprays differently and reacts differently when you use them, but I don't care what brand it is. I'm not brand loyal when it comes to paint or anything like that. If I think the color is cool, that's what I'm going to go for. So this is Badger Minotaur, and I really like this deep, royal, kind of fun purple. And that's what I'm going to do outside, and then just go along the outside, just hitting it up. And I gradually build these things up. I really gradually build them up, and I'm doing it from a 45-degree angle and from a distance. So I'm basically dusting a lot of this paint, which is a lot different than what I usually do with minis, where I get up close and personal most of the time. I do set my PSI pretty high for this. I think I have it at 50 or 60. I don't know. It's pretty high for this. It's because I really want it to reach the miniature, and I am holding it at pretty far distance away. Now all I'm doing is to touch up the little bits, and that's about right with the purple. It's up to you if you're doing this. Okay, so next up we're going to hit some well, this is a combination, really. You have some skull white, right? And that's what I'm going to do with that. And then I'm going to hit some white ink and do like a 50-50. I am mixing inks with my paints recently just to add some pigment. See, I want a coverage here, so that's exactly what I went for right there. And, of course, I put a little bit of airbrush flow improver in there just to get it to flow through the airbrush very nicely. And I'm being kind of cautious. I don't want to get rid of that Echo Mousse purple from Badger that I laid down before. So I'm just being careful to hit the edges and hit it and make sure that the white is creeping up the little sides of the inner crater right there. I do want to hit those little sides without going overboard. And so gently coming up from, I guess, the edge all the way up to the tip of the edge. I don't know how else to explain it. But being very cautious, I guess that's the best way to do it. And I slowly go around and hit the entire surface area. Now, white is really important to hit because that is your brightest point. That is your basis. Everything else is going to go around that. This is going to be your guideline. Also, what you can do is you can add values, sketching values into this as well. In other words, you could do some undershading before you come up with other colors, because the next color is going to be a blue, or should be a blue in the rotation. And you got to make sure that the blue, whatever area the blue is covering, it actually, you actually see the shadows, and you don't want to lose any of that because these paints are transparent in nature. When I add ink to a paint is because I want to increase the opacity of the item. So what I do is I add the ink, and then it's so densely pigmented, there's so much pigment that the cover is just incredible when it comes to inks. So I'm just messing around with inks mixed in with colors. So if you do want coverage, I recommend that you use inks, and I use FW inks from Dowell and Ronnie. They are really cool. I like them. I used to buy them at Hobby Lobby, but Hobby Lobby doesn't carry them anymore. I don't know why, but I really do like. And one of those bottles will last you just about a lifetime because it's just they're a larger bottle and they hold so much more. And one drop of that is like nothing, So you notice how it's covering, and I'm doing things in layers, but I'm also not waiting too long for it to dry. Normally, I would wait a very long time between steps in order for them to dry. Now, this is the first time I ever did craters. I did own craters before. I just never knew how to approach them. These were warped, I have to say. And what I did was I took a heat gun and bent them back to place. So at the mercy. Now, when you're using heat guns with plastic, be very careful because they will melt the plastic. In fact, I melted the plastic a little bit in order for it to get bendy, so I can bend it back into shape. Then you want to lay it down on an extremely flat surface to make sure that you have all the lips or the lifts that might occur on your table. Then place it on the table itself to see, as you place it on the table, your game table, what it's going to look like. So that's definitely something that you may want to consider when doing any kind of terrain that's made out of plastic. Warping does occur. And the reason why warping does occur is sometimes when they take the plastic piece out of the molding, they don't allow it sufficient time for it to dry before they package it and move it on its way. When you do that, the item is actually going to start conforming to the package that it's placed in, and it kind of warps a little as it dries. So with a heat gun, what you're doing is heating it up to the temperature of when it was casted, therefore it makes it moldable. Alright, so what I'm going to do here is just add some highlight values of some of this stuff like spilling over just to add a fun effect of some of this gooey goodness spilling over the sides. And there you go. There's some values with some highlights. Looks pretty cool. I'm going to take another piece so you can take a look at. I did exactly the same process, and I did it with all the pieces. Now I'm going to hit it with Lagoon Blue from Badger Minotaur. I do like to use a lot of Minotaur paints right now because I'm kind of trying to get through them. In other words, go through them so I have an excuse to buy more paint. But no, seriously, Lagoon Blue is perfect for this application in my opinion. I tried a whole bunch of blues, and I looked through a whole bunch of blues before I settled in on this one, and I just think with the white background, it was truly perfect for this application. So what I'm doing is just going to the border and being very careful not to touch the middle. Do not touch the middle. You want to go for that glowing effect? Then you have to do it in a bit of layers and not necessarily complete coverage. Now, yeah, is there going to be a little bit of fading? Sure, but getting the edges without getting the walls is really important. Okay, going right up to the edge. You got to be very careful of going to the edges on this because you can so easily creep up those walls, and then it kind of ruins the effect. So you got to get really close to the walls without. So the liquid has to be blue, but the walls cannot. So it's just tricky. If you get a little bit on the walls, it's not really a big deal, you know. But try not to, and that's the big deal right there. At least the attempt is being made. I really liked working on these because this is the first time I ever looked at a magazine and said, "Hey, I want to make that," and then I just look at the item and deconstruct the paints and layers in my mind while I'm looking at the paint job, and then recreate it in person, and it actually worked. Okay, so now what I'm doing is getting in those values that highlight hotspot values of the things leaking over, and getting that blue as well. I really like the contrast right there. I like that blue with that purple. It's so cold and ethereal, and I wanted to go for something that I can use for both Age of Sigmar as well as Warhammer 40k. Those are the two major games that I do like to play, so I'm always consistent with trying to make terrain for both of those. Now currently I'm trying to make more AOS terrain because I do have a lot of 40k terrain, which is great for battle reports and everything in the future. But I want to have battle reports for Age of Sigmar as well, so I kind of want that kind of terrain. I do still have to get the gates. I don't know what they're called. The realm gates. Yeah, those. You should know. That's pretty good. They had realm gate wars. I still need the realm gates. I really want to get them, but I have not seen them on super sale somewhere. If I see them on super sale somewhere, then I'll definitely try to get them. Alright, so it's really important, I can't stress this, not to hit the middle. But if you do accidentally hit the middle of these craters, then it's not that much of a big deal to go over it with white and then come back with the blue again and try again. So layering at this point doesn't matter because it's a liquidy effect, so you can put as many layers as you want and it won't look like a solid. So that's the good thing about this. Know what I'm trying to do, just hitting on the side, having it spill a little bit, adding some visual interest. I like to add visual interest to a piece. I want you to keep looking at a piece, no matter what I'm painting, and actually glean more information out of it the more you look at it. And I really, I can't express as much how much I love the way these colors interact and play off each other, how the light really encapsulates something that's more like ecoplasmic than anything else, a cold ecoplasmic, because it's boiling, freezing, or something weird on a planet like that, which I think it's just a great concept. So I picked up a bunch of terrain, and I'm trying to challenge myself to get a ton of terrain done. I'm in terrain mode, and I really need to start on my competition mini for the Nova Open this year. So, and I know the Nova Open just ended last week, so I'm giving myself a full year to invest in this piece coming up. Alrighty, so next up, we're going to hit Demonic Skin from Badger Minotaur. Ironically, demonic Skin is really pink. It's just pink. I just thought it would be a great intermediary color to add visual interest. I think that the purple is great, but I wanted to give highlights to the purple and want better highlights to a purple and a nice hot pink, especially with those pastel blue colors. I don't know, it just bubblegummed my day. I don't know, bubblegum crisis maybe? I don't know. But I think it came out really well for an accent piece. Just to really have those details in that pink going into the purple was perfect. I was always looking for a highlight. I didn't know what I was going to use. But yeah, surprising enough, Demonic Skin. I don't know why Demonic Skin is purple. Is pink. So, but hey, I am not going to complain with that. Is that a Slaneshi thing or something? No idea. Overall, you can see that it adds a density to it, where it has multiple layers, the highlight, the shadows, and everything in between. Next up, what we're going to do, we have this nice brush. It's from Nicole. It's a Nicole brush, and it's so soft. The bristles are so soft. So here I'm going to use some sky blue and just adding a bit of a dry brush. I'm taking a lot of this paint off, and I mean a ton of this paint off. Still going. Still going. Still going. It's still going. Still. Okay. Now, let's see. And when I dry brush, I don't like to overbrush, which is when you apply a semi-wet dry brush. But I do like to dry brush, like superiorly dry brush. Like I go back over and over and over again. And the reason for this is because I like to control how much paint goes onto any piece that I put. So I usually use a lot less than a lot of people would use in order to do something. In this case, it really worked out well because this little dry brush here really hit a home run just to pick out those edges. And it is terrain after all, so I don't mind staying there and brushing for a while before I get it. And it takes a while when you use a lot of the paint and take a lot of the paint off. It just takes forever. Now, that's weird. I had this little bit right here, and it just went a little too much, in my opinion. But, hey, you live and you learn, right? All right, rest of it came out pretty well. I think a little dry brush did it nicely, just hitting the areas that I might have missed. So dry brushing is the next step that I did to create this piece. I'm sure there's more than one way to do it. Alrighty, so last up here is the piece, and what we're going to do is we're going to hit it with dull coat. That's right, dull coat. We're going to hit it all over the place and dull it all out. Okay, time for the pictures.
Well, there you have it. I looked up a design in a magazine and I said that was cool, and I saw it to fruition and broke it down layer by layer and reconstructed it in physical form. You ever wanted to do that? Look at a picture and then recreate it? Well, all you have to do is try and try and try until you get there. And you could post up pictures on the Miniatures Paintbrush Legion. Well, if you like this video, like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time on the Miniatures Paintbrush.